Friends, my name is Eileen Culleton and I am the sister of March4 Culleton. This week is the 30th anniversary of the night she was raped and murdered. March was just 20 years old when Jonathan Bakewell broke down her back door to rape and murder her in her bed. This crime is every woman's worst nightmare. Bakewell originally got a life sentence with no parole. Then they changed the laws and his sentence was reduced to just 20 years non-parole. 20 years is not a life sentence. When he was released 5 years ago, he was 55, and since then he has breached his parole 6 times for taking drugs, the same drugs he took the night he raped and murdered my sister. After I fought a 2.5-year campaign, the parole board finally cancelled his parole. That was 3 months ago. Tomorrow, Bakewell will be back before the Supreme Court asking for a new non-parole period to be set. I'm absolutely horrified. Bakewell is as dangerous today as he was the night he raped and murdered my sister. Bakewell should never have been released. And he should never have been released after his first parole breach, let alone the next 5. This is why I'm calling for law reform. I'm calling for the crime of murder with sexual assault to be made a standalone crime, carrying a mandatory life sentence with no parole. Because rapist murderers like Jonathan Bakewell should never get a second chance to repeat their crime. Women in the community have a right to be safe. And I am calling on the Attorney General to step up and show leadership and respond to this. Rape is a gender hate crime, and the crime of murder with sexual assault is a gender hate crime of the most heinous kind. Life sentencing for murder with sexual assault will send the strongest possible message that society does not tolerate rape crime. And look, there's a legal precedent for this law reform under the legislation. So there is the crime of murder, 19A, murder of a police officer, 19B, and it carries a mandatory life sentence, no parole. So why not a 19C? Murder with sexual assault, carrying a mandatory life sentence with no parole. I suggested this in my submission to the New South Wales Murder Sentencing Review, and they ignored it. Mark Speakman, the Attorney General, called this sentencing review because of community expectations that our murder sentencing wasn't meeting those expectations, and because we have a national crisis of violence against women. The Sentencing Council, in their report, paid lip service to this crisis, but in their report, they recommend recommended to just keep the status quo. Mark Speakman said that he's not bound by the Sentencing Council report, that he can still put legislation forward, and yet, despite all the lip service, he's done nothing. So I'm calling on the Attorney General, Mark Speakman, to step up and show leadership and answer this call for law reform. The Attorney General has the mandate to do that because Australia is a signatory to the United Nations Convention against the discrimination, all forms of discrimination against women. And in their 2018 report, they recommended legislative reform to address this crisis of femicide. A woman's life must be valued equally to a man's life. The law is there to serve us, the people, as are the politicians who write these laws. We say it's time for justice. We demand change. We demand safety for women. We demand law reform. Friends, I ask you to unite with one voice and join with me. Sign my petition, Life for Rapist Murderers, on change.org, and also write to the Attorney General and call for this law reform. There are more details on my website, eileenculleton.com. Thank you.